Let me tell you this story carefully, because it's not one of those fake, exaggerated tales made for likes and comments. This happened to me. And even now, when the lights are low and the room is quiet, I can still feel the cold corners of that night pressing against my chest. I was living alone back then in an old house on the edge of town. It wasn't fancy. It was cheap, wooden, and a little worn out. The kind of place people call character, but I just called it quiet. Every evening I would come home tired, make a quick meal, and sink into the couch with a book or a phone in my hand. The heater would hum, the window would show a dark street, and the house would feel like a safe bubble around me, except for one thing. There was this one floorboard in the hallway, near the bedroom door, that always made the same sound. Tap, pause, tap, like someone testing the steadiness of the wood before putting their whole weight on it. I told myself it was just the house settling. Old houses, old floors, they talk in their own way. That's what I told myself anyway. The first real sign came on a rainy Tuesday. It was the kind of rain that blurs everything. Streetlights smeared into orange halos, the wet road reflecting headlights like broken mirrors. I got home late, soaked in tiredness and light drizzle. I fumbled with the keys, turned the lock, shut the door, and leaned back against it for a second. Everything was normal. The living room felt like it always did. The smell of old furniture, the fridge humming in the kitchen, the faint warmth of the heater. I went straight to bed. I didn't feel like thinking. I just wanted to disappear into sleep. But around 3 a.m, I woke up. It wasn't loud, just a soft tapping somewhere in the living room. At first I thought it was the tree branch outside brushing against the window, but it was too slow. Tap, pause, tap, like fingernails lightly dragging along the underside of the table. My heart tightened. I lay still, listening. The sound stopped. For a moment there was only silence, and then the sound of my own breathing, suddenly too loud. I told myself I was dreaming, or maybe I was just exhausted. But the air in the room felt colder than it should have, like someone had cracked the window open for a second and then slammed it shut. Slowly, I sat up. The floor was cold under my feet as I walked to the living room. The couch cushions were slightly shifted, as if someone had been sitting there recently. On the coffee table, a mug sat there, half filled with cold coffee. I frowned. I hadn't made coffee that late. I'd been at work. I'd come straight home. I picked up the mug. The handle was cold. The liquid inside had no steam, no warmth. It was just there, like it had been waiting for someone to drink it. I forced myself to stay calm. Maybe a neighbor walked in by mistake. Maybe someone had left it there days ago, and I didn't remember. Maybe I was just imagining more than I should have. I checked the door anyway. Still locked. The chain was on. The windows were closed. The hallway floorboard made that same sound again, but this time it felt heavier, like footsteps, not just wood adjusting. I went back to bed that night, but I didn't sleep properly. Every little sound felt bigger than it was. The refrigerator clicked like a counting clock. The pipes in the walls groaned. Once, I heard what sounded like my name, not shouted, but whispered, as if someone was testing my name on their tongue. I opened my mouth to answer and then remembered. There was no one there. I finally drifted into a half sleep and woke again when something brushed against my ear. It wasn't a touch. It was a sound, a whisper, so close it felt like breath. I bolted upright, my heart slamming into my ribs. The room was dark. The faint red numbers on my phone glowed. 2:53 a.m. I sat there, breathing too fast. The whisper didn't come again. For a moment, I almost convinced myself I'd been dreaming. Then I got up and went to the living room. The mug was gone. The couch cushions were back in place. Nothing looked different, except for the air. The room felt colder, heavier, like someone had left and taken the warmth with them. I laughed, a little too loud to cover the fear. "I'm just tired," I muttered. "I'm losing my mind." I decided to sleep on the couch for the rest of the night. If anything was going to happen, I wanted to be where I could see it. I dragged a blanket and pillow, turned on the TV to low volume, and lay down with the remote clutched in my hand. Night makes a house feel different. Shadows aren't just dark spots on the wall. They start to look like they have shape. The lamp by the window stretched a long, thin shadow across the floor, like a hand reaching out. The hallway doorway looked deeper than it should. The house held its breath. Around 5 in the morning, I heard it again. First, a dragging sound, like fabric, or possibly bare feet sliding slowly along the wooden floor. It came from the hallway. My body froze. The dragging grew closer. Then, clear and sharp, a low laugh echoed through the living room. It wasn't a friendly laugh. It was dry, mocking, like someone who knew a secret and enjoyed watching me realize it. The laugh came again, but this time it sounded like it was moving. First from the hallway, then from the corner behind the couch, then from somewhere near the window. It didn't feel like it was coming from one place. It felt like it was inside the room. The hallway light flickered. The TV screen glitched for a second. And then, sitting on the coffee table, the mug was back. But this time, it was steaming. Hot coffee sat in it, as if someone had just poured it. I stared at it. My hand shook. I reached out slowly, as if I was about to touch something dangerous. The moment my fingers brushed the mug, the steam vanished. The contents were cold again. The mug was empty. The heat was gone. I backed away, my breath catching. On the floor, dust and tiny marks formed a trail. Small footprints, smudged at the edges, leading from my bedroom door, past the couch, and toward the window. The prints were too small, strangely spaced, like someone who had learned to walk but hadn't quite got the rhythm right. I swallowed hard and went to the window. The latch was undone. The window was barely open, just a crack. The night air slipped in, cold and wet. I shut it quickly and locked it again, my hands trembling. I stayed on the couch for the rest of the night, eyes darting between the hallway, the window, and the mug that wasn't there anymore. The house felt like it was watching me, like every corner had become an eye. After that night, the house didn't stop. It just changed pace. Locks were checked and rechecked. I replaced the latches. I left lights on all night. The TV played low-volume noise through the hours. I told myself I was just being careful. I told myself I was just being paranoid. Then the objects started moving. Books fell open to pages I hadn't read. My phone rang at 2 a.m., and when I answered, there was only static, and under that, the faint sound of breathing. Once I woke up to find all my shoes lined up neatly by the door, toes pointing inward, like someone had arranged them for a ceremony that never happened. I started dreaming about the hallway. Not just my hallway, but a longer version of it. The walls stretched farther than they should have. The ceiling got higher. At the end of it, there was a door I'd never seen before. In the dream, I would walk toward it, hand reaching for the knob, and then I'd wake up with my heart pounding, the taste of metal in my mouth. The dreams felt real. The hallway smelled like rain and old books. The door felt cold the moment I thought about touching it. One evening, while leaning against the kitchen counter, I saw a reflection in the microwave door. For a second, I thought I saw someone standing behind me. I turned quickly. Nothing. My own reflection stared back at me, blinking. And then, for the briefest moment, something shifted behind that reflection. A shadow that wasn't mine. It slipped away like smoke blown from a candle. My chest tightened. It felt like someone had been sitting on me and then abruptly stood up. That was the first time I felt true fear. Not just spooked, not just uneasy, but genuinely afraid. I collected everything that happened into a file on my phone. I called the number the police had given me. I told them about the footsteps, the mug, the footprints, the voice. They listened politely. They suggested a security camera for the hallway. I agreed. I set up a small camera in the living room, facing the hallway. The little red light blinked steadily. I watched the black and white feed on my laptop. The image split into tiny little squares of light and shadow. The hallway looked boring. The floorboard looked like it always did. The house looked normal. At 3:12 a.m., the screen changed. At first, it was just a ripple in the air, like heat rising from asphalt. Then a smear of darkness moved across the frame. Then slowly, a shape emerged, tall, thin, long-limbed, like a shadow stretched out of itself. It stepped into the hallway, then into the living room, moving as if it had no weight. The camera didn't catch a reflection. It didn't show any light bouncing off this thing. The shape just moved, unhurried, until it stopped right in front of the lens. Its head tilted, that same slow, curious tilt the floorboard always made. It looked at the camera, and then the image tore apart. Static crawled across the screen. The picture glitched, stuttered, and then went black. When the feed came back, the room was empty. No one was there. The file saved itself automatically, with a timestamp that didn't match the time on my laptop. My friend, who knows cameras and software, watched it with me. He went quiet. He said the corruption happened exactly where the shape passed through the frame. Not random, not a glitch. Something passed through here, he whispered. Something that isn't supposed to be in the data. I didn't sleep well that night. The house started to feel more like a person than a building. The taps in the hallway became more frequent. The mirrors would fog up from the inside, and sometimes, before the fog cleared, I'd see faint words smeared across the glass. Get out. The letters were uneven, shaky, like a child had tried to write but hadn't learned how yet. The mirror would drip a dark, oily liquid that smelled like rain-soaked paper. I tried to live normally. I cleaned more. I organized things. I left music on all night. I even slept at friends' places for a while. But every time I came back, the house felt a little heavier. The air felt thicker. The floorboard sounded louder. The shadows felt deeper. One night, I came home with a bag of groceries. I left the door unlocked for a moment, thinking I'd be in and out. I stepped inside and froze. The lights were off, but the room felt lit from somewhere else. A faint glow came from the walls, not from any lamp I knew. The couch was gone. In its place, my things were arranged like an altar. My mug sat in the center. Around it, 3 of my books lay open at random pages. My shirt was folded neatly into a square. On top of everything, my left shoe sat like a small offering. The footprint marks were there again, smaller than before, but forming a circle around the arrangement, like a crowd of tiny observers watching me from the edges. I felt my stomach drop. My hands opened and closed without realizing it. I wanted to run, but I couldn't move. Then I noticed the back door open a crack, the same way I'd shut it earlier. Someone or something had opened it again. I shut it, locked it, and backed away. I slept on the floor that night, blanket wrapped tight around me, my back against the wall, eyes fixed on the hallway. The house felt like it was holding its breath. Around 2 a.m, I heard it, the sound of paper tearing. Slowly, one of my books lifted off the floor. It floated for a second, pages fluttering like a bird's wings. The book turned to a single page, and the words on that page seemed to glow, not bright, but just enough to catch my eye. Then the book fell, the cover closed with a soft click, and the room fell silent again. I walked over and opened the book. The page was bent, the crease sharp. Someone had marked a line with a finger's pressure. The sentence read, "He should have listened." I didn't know who he was. I didn't know who it was talking about. But it felt like an accusation aimed straight at me, as if the house had been keeping score all along. From that night, the house seemed to want to talk to me, not with words, but with actions. At night, phantom voices layered like a whispering chorus would wind through the rooms. The sound wasn't in any language I recognized, but the tone felt like a mix of mockery and sorrow. Objects were arranged into small scenes. A chair tipped back, a spoon laid across a plate, a blanket folded neatly over empty air. It felt like the house was replaying moments it had collected, as if they were a story it wanted me to watch. I tried everything. I burned sage at the door. I said prayers under my breath. A friend and I brought a priest over. He walked through the house, looked at the mirrors, felt the temperature in the hallway, and finally shook his head. He blessed the threshold, but I could tell he was more unsettled than I was. "Some places hold on to things," he muttered before leaving. After that, the house felt bolder. It answered back. One night I sat on the floor and cried. I didn't cry softly. I cried like someone who had been carrying something too heavy for too long. The tears burned my cheeks. I looked around the empty room and asked out loud, "Why me?" The house stayed quiet for a long time. Then, from the hallway, the sound started again. Tap, pause, tap. Only now it was right behind me. I turned slowly. In the doorway, the figure stood. It was tall, thin, made of shadow and dim light, like smoke shaped into a person. It moved like someone who had forgotten how to walk properly. Its head tilted. That same slow, curious tilt I'd seen on the camera, in the hallway, in the dreams. Where its face should have been, there was a blur, like trying to look at someone through falling rain. I should have screamed. I should have bolted for the door. But my voice was gone. My legs didn't move. I just sat there, staring. The figure stepped closer. The air around me grew colder. My breath came out like a white cloud. The creature, whatever it was, lifted one long, thin hand and pointed toward the window. Beyond the glass, the night sky was dark, but along the edge of the yard, tiny lights blinked and moved, like fireflies that had forgotten how to fly. The lights moved in strange patterns, tracing shapes, then letters, then slowly converging toward the house, as if something in the dark had been summoned. The figure came right into the center of the room. It stopped in front of me. It reached out and placed its hand lightly against my chest. The touch was cold, like ice wrapped in cloth. It didn't hurt. It just pressed in, and for a second, images flared behind my eyes. A staircase that went nowhere, spiraling up into darkness. A child laughing in a house I'd never seen. The sound of rain on glass. A face blurring behind a curtain of tears. The images moved too fast to understand. They felt like memories that weren't mine. Then the hand withdrew. The figure took a step back, tilted its head once more, like a question left hanging, and walked into the hallway. The sound followed it. Tap. Pause. Tap. When the hallway light flickered back to normal, the room was empty again. That night, I made a decision. I packed my clothes, my books, my photos, not in a rush, but in a slow, careful way, like someone preparing for a long goodbye. I found an old photo album in the closet and flipped through it. And there, tucked behind a page about a family vacation, I saw a photograph I didn't recognize. It showed the inside of my house, but it looked older, the walls a little darker, the furniture different. In the corner, a small figure stood, hunched, head bowed, shoulders thin. The face was blurred, but the posture was the same. That tilt of the head, that half-curious, half-sad stance I'd seen in the hallway. I had lived in that house only a few years. How was that photo taken? I called my mother the next day. She went quiet on the other end. "We moved boxes into the attic before you were born," she said slowly. "We thought that photo was just dust on the lens." I asked her to come over. Together, we went into the attic. The dust was thick. The air smelled of old wood and forgotten paper. Between boxes and old furniture, we found things that didn't belong to me. A child's drawing of a house with a small figure beside it. On the back, someone had scribbled, "He never left." A small shoe that matched the size of the one I'd seen by the door. A scrap of fabric that looked like it had come from the shirt I'd found in the pile. Pages torn from a notebook, filled with half-erased lists and strange phrases. It was like the house had been collecting pieces of someone else, someone who had disappeared a long time ago, but never really left. The discovery made the house feel different. It wasn't just a building that liked to scare new tenants. It was a place that remembered, that held on to people and moments and stored them like old photographs in a dusty album. The thought made my skin crawl, fear I could handle. The idea of memory, long, patient, and hungry, felt worse. After that, the house settled into a strange rhythm. Sometimes it offered something gentle, the faint sound of a lullaby from an empty room, the smell of lemon soap on a cold day, the clear outline of a shadow pressing its hands against the window glass. Other times it struck out, a light shattering in the hallway, a picture frame falling to the floor, a voice calling my name like someone testing it for the first time. One night, while my mother was there, a door upstairs slammed shut on its own. She grabbed my arm, eyes wide. "We should go," she whispered. We left that night, boxes in the car, the sound of the house closing behind us like a held-in breath. Moving out didn't clear the feeling. The calls started a few weeks later, my phone ringing with my own house number on the screen, the line filled with static and the sound of something dragging across wood. A neighbor once told me they'd seen a light in my window when the house was supposed to be empty. The sense of being watched traveled with me, clinging to my back like a cold shadow. Eventually, the house was sold. New people came. They stayed a short time. Some complained of sleepless nights. Some left in the middle of the night without explaining why. The realtor shrugged and said, "Old houses have stories." The listing showed bright, clean photos, the kind you'd see in a family catalog. The cracks were airbrushed away. The hallway disappeared behind fake smiles. Months later, on a rainy afternoon, I drove past. The sky was heavy, the road slick. Through the curtains, I saw a figure at the top of the stairs. A small shape, blurred behind glass. It turned slowly, as if it had heard the engine of my car. For a heartbeat, it looked straight at me. The head tilted, just like before. The world seemed to freeze around that motion. I drove away quickly, my hands clenched on the wheel, my heart hammering against my ribs. I knew then that the house hadn't forgotten me. It hadn't forgotten anyone. It kept its guests like a memory that never fades. Sometimes, late at night, I wake up tasting rain and feeling the tap, pause, tap of that old floorboard. The sound echoes in my bones. The hallway stretches in my dreams, forever longer than it should be. The door at the end waits, slightly ajar. And if you ever pass a quiet, old house like that, one that looks like it's just a house, just bricks and wood, try not to ignore it completely. Most nights, it really is just a house. But sometimes, if you listen too closely, you'll hear it. A soft sound, like footsteps that never stop. A house that remembers all the people who left it behind, and quietly whispers, "Will you stay?"